Hey everyone, welcome back to Shutter Magazine. I'm Dustin Lucas, and today I'm going to be going through the Liquify tool in Photoshop and how to use it appropriately. So let's start by opening up our images directly into Photoshop and we can get started. First things first, I want to talk about the importance of setting your files up correctly when you bring them out of Camera Raw and into Photoshop. We'll go through a couple settings here once I find my images through all these folders, so I can show you what I'm talking about. So right away, I can open up my images directly in Photoshop. I'm in Camera Raw. Nothing special about this. A couple things. I don't mess with clarity and vibrance too much. I had a few settings where I was choosing camera profile, doing some lens correction. Those things are all normal. No sharpening, noise reduction at this point. Just trying to do some minimal color correction and editing. So what I want to do now is I want to choose the specific images that I want to open up. So I'm going to go ahead, select my rated images. Now, by clicking this link at the bottom, you have an option to open images as smart objects. And I'm going to show you why this is important real quick, and then show you how to toggle between smart objects and not. So we're going to go ahead and open up all of our images as smart objects, and we'll get started. Now, just to preface the issue with smart objects, it's a file that takes up a lot of space and a lot of RAM and video memory on your computer. Be mindful of your hardware. Check out on Adobe's website what the recommended settings are. I'm going to assume at least 8 gigs of RAM. You're going to want to have at the very least a dual core processor, if not a quad core, to help out with the images. And so let's take a look here. It looks like I'm missing one of my images. Not sure why. Hmm. We can work with this image here. Turn on our lens correction. Camera faithful. We'll go ahead and hit open object. So the big difference for smart objects right out the gate. So what we have is we have our layer here. It doesn't say background, it's not locked, but it gives us the ability to go back into Camera Raw and make those adjustments. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to double click on this thumbnail, and boom, we're right back into Camera Raw. All of our settings are matched here. That's pretty great. You also have the ability to choose filters, and we'll get into that later, what the importance of that is. But starting out with Liquify, a real quick tool to use is the Transform tool. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book, just to do a quick skinny on this on the subject. So what we can do is we can hit Command T, or go up to our Edit in the menu bar, and we're going to choose Transform, and we're looking for Free Transform. I can hold Option, click into the image, and we can start to thin our client out immediately. But as you notice, we're going to start having some missing pixels here on the edge. We'll fix that in just a second. So now what we need to do is fill this area in here, which we can do with a few different options. We can use the content aware scale, but with using the smart objects, we don't have that as an option. We also didn't duplicate our background layer, which is a cardinal sin for Photoshop, but just wanted to show you working on your same layer, bringing in the transform, not a good option. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back. We're going to duplicate our background layer. We're just going to call this Liquify. I could type correctly. Bear with me. So we're going to go ahead and create a new background layer so that way we can have the ability to stretch this image in and we actually have some background pixels. Now, a couple options here. We can paint in our background layer. Let's make it at 100% opacity. Let's see here. So we can get rid of this line. But personally, I think that's a bit sloppy to do. See, as we start to get her arm and everything in here, and this just starts to look really sloppy and ugly here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to drop this layer. I'm going to leave my background as a smart object. That's fine. I'm going to create my Liquify layer again. And I'm going to rasterize it. So I'm going to right click on it and choose rasterize layer. Now that's going to give me the ability to stretch in my object to here. Let's just go to there. Maybe a bit much. Right about there. Now I can access content aware scale, and this tool is going to stretch out our background without messing with our subject too much. So as you see, we're not getting, she's not being stretched back out. And so we can see the difference right out the gate between these two. Really simple. Using the content scale works well with continuous backgrounds or something like this with a lot of blur. Be careful when you have details. It's not the best scale tool, but it works pretty great for that. So moving on, now we want to work with the Liquify tool. And the reason why we chose smart objects is because it's going to allow you to get smart filters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this Liquify now and I'm going to convert it back to a smart object. Pretty simple. The only problem now is I can't go back to my camera raw settings, but I still have the ability. It just takes me back to Liquify. So what we can do is we can go up to filter. We'll choose, where am I going here? Liquify. Losing my mind. So we can start doing some Liquify using a Liquify tool. So first things first is I want to talk about the freeze and the thaw masking. So to do that, I'm going to jump onto another image. We're going to go ahead and click cancel. This is a great image to use that tool on. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to leave this as a smart object as it is. Go ahead and choose Liquify. And I like to use the freeze and thaw mask when I want to reshape her body. And by doing that, you have to be very careful because you're going to start moving the other pixels in the area. But what's perfect about the freeze and thaw, the freeze allows you to keep certain pixels that you paint over from being unmanipulated and allows you to manipulate those around that mask. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So for her, if I want to redefine her dress here and just give her a little bit more of an S curve, just kind of stretched out with the dress here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually paint like I'd want this dress to look. I think I got a little out of control there. Let's zoom out a bit. But if I start at the chest and I go in and back to her hip, it's going to allow me to use one of my stretching tools to kind of create that S curve. Now I want to make sure I can hold Option and I can paint some of that out. So that allows me to quickly access the thaw tool instead of toggling between the, you'll use the F key for freeze and the D key for thaw. I like to just use the option key to toggle back and forth. I don't want to get too crazy with this. Just kind of show you how this tool can work really well. So what I like to do is, you can choose it to paint on both sides if you want, to freeze all of this area. You would actually paint this like you'd be painting, like you'd want the dress to look. So if I were wanting to kind of redefine her shape to look like my mask, it's exactly how I want to paint it. I don't know if I need to do too much work on this side, other than probably more with the push forward warp tool. We'll get to that in a second. So I'll just leave that. I'll leave this kind of like this. It's kind of the way her dress looks. We don't have to complete it at the top, but it kind of gives a little bit of an hourglass shape. It's a little dramatic. But now we're going to use a tool to push. We're going to use the push right tool. Excuse me, the push left. And what we need to do here is, this tool is very touchy, right? So if I just click, it's going to work by clicking and going up or clicking and going down. If I click and go up, it's going to push everything to the left, which I want it to do, but it's going to mess with this door. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. So I have my regular brush size, and I'm going to kind of follow the curve of this mask here, and just kind of show you how this tool can start to get really funky. And you're kind of like, well, how do I get this to go over? And now I'm dealing with a bunch of look at that. That looks terrible. So if I'm going to go back, the big thing to understand with this tool is it's up and down motions. It's not left and right. It's not following the curve of the dress. Just making sure your brush is big enough and just go straight up. So I'm going to click here, and I'm dragging it straight up. Boom. That's it. So it pushed my door over a bit, but it looks a lot better than that other option did. So literally just make your dress, and you can make, if you need to make the brush a bit smaller, so that way it's not manipulating as much, you just go straight up. But you're going to notice, smaller brushes, you're still missing some areas. So I always kind of like double the or even triple the widest spot that you have, just making sure you can get good coverage. And I start by centering the my brush in the middle, and I just kind of go straight up. Now if I turn off the mask, which I can do that here by clicking none, you can see it kind of stretched this in a bit. It's also something you have to pay attention to. It's kind of making it sharp and jagged. You have to be very careful with this tool. But just wanted to show you how you can use the mask and push in for the side. It works really well, but spending a little more time, in this area. Now what we can do is we can use some of our other tools. So we have a bulge tool, which works pretty well. If I want to fix some of those areas and kind of bring them back, we can certainly do that. The bolts tool works really well. Also, you have your, it's the bloat tool. Then you have the pucker. So the pucker can be accessed by holding Option. If I want to make something smaller, say for instance, I don't know, if I wanted to shrink down sort of the armpit, I can do that. Same way here. Pucker works okay on the arms. It just kind of sucks everything in. It doesn't allow you to really move stuff. But you have to be really careful of what it's adjusting around the image as well. So the pucker and bloat kind of speak for themselves. You have this twirl clockwise tool, which I'll get into later, how it works well for the face. Also this face tool that I really want to get into as well. It's a really great tool. But for this image here, and just kind of fixing some of these things like the dress, real simple options to just use our forward warp tool. It's basically it's the original Liquify tool to just kind of start pushing parts of the image in. So the smaller your brush is, you have to be careful. Now it's starting to look terrible on the arm. It's kind of like a putty tool, and it just starts manipulating certain parts of the image. You want to make the brush bigger so that way you can make these kind of changes and they're not detrimental to your image. So overall, we can get the image just some little things, you know, just kind of fixing the dress a bit. Overall, I want to move on to another image where we, because if we use the face tool, no faces are detected in this image. So let's start. I'm going to go ahead and just click OK, and just show you real quick your options for Liquify. So I can turn Liquify off. It's on its own smart layer. Here's the reason why that's important. So if I want to go back into this layer and I want to start taking this image back to its original in specific areas, I can start to use my reconstruct tool. So I can start painting this to where it'll warp the images back to where they were. Now, I can try and do that over the areas that I manipulate and fix, but you can see it gets pretty gross. But it works really well if you made any adjustments and you're just wanting to kind of take them back to originally where they were. Those work really well for allowing you to do that. And you don't have the ability to make those kind of changes if you're not on a smart object. Going back and using that tool. So if we rasterize this layer and go back to Liquify, working on a separate layer or not, I don't have the ability to click now. I lose all of that data. So it's very important for the reconstruct tool to be working on a smart object. But at the same time, you know, with this image, we didn't duplicate our background layer. We didn't do any of that, which is a no-no. But since my filter's its own layer, it allows us to not have to do that process and duplicate the background layer and all those sorts of things. Now, you have the mask option to paint it out as well. Pretty simple to do there. But you just get a little more features by using the Liquify and the reconstruct tool. It's pretty great. So I'm going to jump over to this image where we want to do some work, more work with the face. So I'm going to jump into Liquify here. And now we can start to utilize some of these other tools for the face. Now the spin clockwise tool is an interesting one when you want to straighten out the face. Now you have to be really careful with it, right? Because it starts to manipulate the image pretty quickly. So if we take a big brush and kind of turn everything all at once, just one click, be kind of careful with this. It allows us to do big changes where we can fix the tilting of the head. I don't think I want to work with the eyes at the moment, but we can get, oh, too much. Yeah, I think that's from there to there subtle enough. Just kind of helps with the image, just straightening the head out a little bit. Now I'm going to use my face detection tool. I'm going to click on that and it's automatically going to detect aspects of the face. You're seeing different areas being highlighted and you're probably going, this would have been nice to know earlier. I mean, we can click on different aspects and work with the jawline. We can, excuse me, that's the jawline. We can work with the length of the face. And we can get very artificial and, you know, start to really take this image to where it doesn't even look like the senior who was shot here. You have to be very careful with these tools because you can get very carried away and to the point to where maybe offending your client because you've altered them too much. I'm going to make the eye a little bigger. Watch out because now her iris is a bit big, so we need to go in here. See how big her iris is there. If we bulge this one, I'm going to pucker that one just to kind of make them the same. Again, you have to be very careful because you very quickly get away from your client and again, doesn't look like them. But I just want to show you some of these tools that they're extremes. Click back on the face tool. We actually have the ability to mess with our cheeks, each cheek separately, which is pretty crazy in itself. We can move the mouth around here. We can move the smile. Jumping into these sliders, you're noticing as I made changes, values are showing up. The face aware Liquify tool is pretty great. I mean, we can choose eye distance in and out with these images. We messed with the nose height, the smile. I mean, we can really exaggerate it. That starts to get really stupid. But we can bring a smile in, you know, for this image. We can mess with the upper lip, make it bring down the lower lip, mouth height, all that kind of stuff. I just want to show you real quick the value of the smart object and being able to get these options back, right? Because we have all these options here. Because once I, like before, once I rasterize it and then I go back into Liquify, all my values are gone. I've lost my preview. I have nothing. So it's just be mindful of working with smart objects, what you have and the ability. Of course, we made a separate layer because we had to. This layer could probably just be a locked. It doesn't need to be a smart smart object, but you know, we don't have the same abilities with other images. But working with the smile works well in an image like this. So if we wanted to come in here and kind of add a little bit of a smile, wanted to show a different example. That other one had a pretty good smile, but you can add just a real subtle smile. You can add a little upper lip, a little lower lip, and now I'm going to put my face aware tool on here, and I could start messing with some of just a little bit of the face here. And I can change the position of the smile just a bit to square it to the camera. Oh, a little too much. But adding a little bit of a smile. And you can see just real subtle adjustments. Nothing crazy. Blame it on the camera angle. Blame it on your lens, your focal length, whatever you want to do for distortion. But this is, I mean, you could just do a little bit of work like this, which I think your client's going to be happy with. It's not changing the way she's looking, but I think she would like this over that. So with that done, we probably need to do a little bit of work with the neck, making the neck a little bit, since we've kind of shrunk the face down, which is all perfectly fine. We can use our forward warp tool and just bring our neck in super quick. And if we wanted to shrink the neck down, you know, you can do those things. Obviously, we're going to have to fill pixels in there. But if we wanted to, I'm going to take that back. I don't want to keep that. Something just to help a little bit with the neck and hair. But that's I mean, that's basically it. With an image like this, we're not going to do a whole lot. And you can really kind of like bring the forehead down a bit and just subtle changes. So there's quite a lot you can do. But again, it's a skinning tool. You're going to offend clients if you go to the extremes. Be subtle. The idea is to make them still look the same, but they might be a little bit happier when they see the before and after. Don't show them the before. Just show them the after. But that's all I have for you guys for the Liquify tool. Again, reach out with any questions you have. I was going through a brief overview of it. There's a lot more you can do with the Liquify tool, but these are some great ways to just you know, create some efficiency for your retouching. So that's all I have for you guys. Thanks.